Dilip came to Karyakata about 6 months back. He has had a very successful run. He initially came for only GMAT preparation, and then he went on to take career services as well for his applications. And yeah, he has had a very good run. He got admits in 3 colleges, 2 of them full scholarship, 1 50% scholarship. So let's start. So Dilip, my first question would be to you, and that's a very common question for all the MBA aspirants, about your background, like where you come from, what was the undergrad, because that's one question which I think is on the top of everybody's mind when they are thinking about an MBA. So can you please take us through your background in brief?
Yeah, so I basically fall into a common category, Indian engineer, if you want to say so, for the applications process. So, yeah, let me just give in a little. I am from Telangana, so I come from a small town around 300 kilometers from Hyderabad. I have done my graduate in IIT Roorkee, and I graduated in 2014. I was a chemical engineer, but yeah, like most people in India, you do your figure out what you want to do in life. So I business analyst with Cardeco, and over the past 6 years, I've worked with Cardeco and OLX. I was initially a business analyst, like I said, but right now I've pivoted into product management.
Okay, so just for the students who are there, what Dilip said was basically he's from IIT Roorkee, chemical engineer, 2014 grad, and he's been working with Cardeco for a while now. Yeah. Okay. So Dilip, how did GMAT happen? Like, how did you think about GMAT, and how did you go about preparing for the same? Like, what was that point? What was the turning point?
So, I mean, ever since my graduation, there was always a thought somewhere in the background that I definitely want to go for a postgrad at some point. And I mean, MS definitely wasn't an option for me because I wasn't really very interested in chemical engineering. So, as I was progressing in my as I was also fortunate to have with really good profiles. So yeah, while speaking to them and sort of understanding the sort of career, eventually MBA seemed like a logical choice, and yeah, decided almost a year ago that yeah, this is what I want to be, and that's when I started kind of looking at GMAT, and I took a mock test. The score wasn't that great initially, but then yeah, that's when I basically started looking at sort of the resources that I can use to boost my score, and basically try to figure out what to do, because I knew that this was something I wanted to do, and I needed some sort of a medium to help get there. So yeah, I looked online and researched a few platforms and spoke to people across a few platforms, and Karyakata was one where I mean, it was something that really fell into place when speaking to the people, the sort of honesty that the folks have, and the sort of services or offerings that they had gelled well with me.
Understood. So, Dilip, one question which I see from a lot of aspirants is that there are a bunch of coaching institutes or professional help centers, whatever you call them, have mushroomed up in last couple of years, right? So how does, as an aspirant who is trying to sort of figure out an institute for himself or herself, go about choosing the same? Like, what were those specific points you were looking at in an institute when you set about searching for a professional help?
So for me, it was this way. So most of us are working, and there's a time is always an issue in terms of balancing things out with work and with the preparation. And you would also have to do a bit of research, and you really need to start as early as possible with the research part to make sure you eventually choose the right schools. So for that particular reason, it was really important for me to have a one-stop shop where you can get all the things. One is your help with the preparation part, and the other thing is the career services part. Everything. And then the other second thing is the sort of flexibility. For example, for me, being an engineer, quant, where I was relatively strong with compared to the verbal part. Career Kata folks were kind of flexible on that. I can utilize more of the resources for the verbal rather than with the quant part. And yeah, I mean, they basically offered this to also switch on the go whenever I felt needed more help with some particular thing rather than sort of to a rigid sort of curriculum or a rigid. So flexibility was also an important factor for me. And then the people, that is also the more important factor for me. You have these honest conversations. Sometimes they were slightly too honest, but then it eventually was important to sort of push me to get to where I wanted.
I mean, agreed to one point here which you mentioned, and it's really worth noting that a lot of institutes offer a very sort of a fixed curriculum wherein, and they're not wrong on their part, but most of the time it's like 30 hours of verbal, 40 hours of verbal. It's like a complete package. Most of the times what institutes miss is that it's something which cannot be commoditized at a very large scale. So I think your point towards flexibility is very pertinent to every student's need. So I think that's something which most of the institutes should look at, like being flexible and on the go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get the feeling that tailored to meet your requirements, and that is something really important basically when you're juggling a lot of things, and you're also investing so much time, effort, and everything. That's really important.
Yeah, I mean, coming from the engineering background, I've seen those classes. So I too have been to coaching classes which are like 100 batches, and there's a topic which is taught in a particular way. So I think that the way you think about how you're sort of tackling students' problem is very important. So that's a very valid, relevant point you pointed out about being flexible in this. So Dilip, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, how much do you think, being a working professional yourself, and I see a lot of folks who are trying to balance out between their professional life and this preparation, how much time did you take to prepare for GMAT? Like, I know there's no fixed answer. Somebody might take 4 months, 5 months, somebody might take lesser time, but how much do you think is a very appropriate time for an individual to invest with obviously professional help?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, there's no right answer to this or a right amount of time for this. It eventually boils down to an individual's strengths and the areas they need to work on. So, I mean, basically, for anyone sort of starting out, or for those who are in the process, you do not compare with yourself with other people. So I've had who had to take multiple attempts and over a span of a year or so, and eventually get I know people who have gotten it with just 3 months or so of preparation. So yeah, it eventually boils down to a lot of different factors. So for me personally, before I started with Career Kata, there was a 2 period where I kind of was to do things on my own, where I've done a few mocks with not so great improvement in my performance. But then since I started, the teaching part was around 40 days with Career Kata, and after the 40 days, I was preparing by myself. But then folks were always available whenever I wanted to get on a call or wanted to clarify some things. And after the 40 days, I took around 2 more months to eventually take the test.
Okay, but honestly, Dilip, 760 is one hell of a score. So, was it your first time, or this was your second or third attempt?
It was my second attempt. On my first attempt, I had a 690.
Okay, understood. So that's again one hell of a improvement. So, Dilip, after like a GMAT, how did you like? Again, there is one common confusion, and that's where like the main crux of the problem starts. How do you go about selecting colleges, selecting countries? And I know this is a very vast question, so it might take you some time, but it would be really grateful for the aspirants to know of how you go about selecting those colleges and countries.
Yeah, so I've already kind of on the whole process being very much tailored to an individual's needs, and this part is basically the most personal thing in the entire process. So where do you want to go, what do you want to do, and everything. So basically one thing everyone has to always remember is basically an MBA is not the end, it's just the means to where you want to get to. So what you need to have a lot of clarity on is what is your end, what is that you're trying to get to, and what are the programs or what are the countries that can help you get to the end. So that's the primary thing. So what is it that you want to do on the short term, and what is it that you want to do on the longer term? So most B schools ask this as a direct question with their essays, but it really is an important thing for you to have clarity on.
So, Dilip, I'm sorry to cut you in between. When you say what you want to do in short term and long term, it's more from a professional point of view. Like, how do you see yourself professionally in terms of industries, or do we need to be as specific as talking about particular companies as well? I mean, how in depth do colleges look for when they're asking such questions?
So there are two parts to this. One thing is answering the questions for the college, and the other thing is within yourself as to what you want to do. So I'm not sure how many people. I'm sure some people would have personal goals on what company I want to work for. Say I want to work for Google or Amazon, but not everyone would have.
Sure.
So first thing is having the clarity within yourself on a personal level. What is it that you want to do? Say 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever it is down the line, and what could help you get there. And that's basically where you can start. And eventually, while writing the essays and sort of trying to answer your questions for the school, sort of trying to sell yourself, that's when you need to do some more research and try to position yourself better to align more with the values of the school and the strengths of the school. So these are the two parts to it. Just to continue with the first question, which is the whole process of decision making. For me personally, I wanted to get it management role, and I wanted to get to the US because that's where most big tech companies are. And if you want to be a product manager with a tech company, you would want to go to the best companies. So that particularly was my personal reason, for sort of the logic behind choosing the schools I chose. So that was the reason number one, and eventually you would also have to look at the finances, the score, and so on. A lot of factors come into it later on.
Okay. So, from what I understood from your answer, was three things. First is obviously what you want to do personally. That's your internal goal. Then your profile, and your profile can be further split into your educational background, your scores, the kind of recommendations you're getting. So
Yeah.
that's the other part of the story. Okay. Dilip, when any of the people are trying to apply, is there a magical number where people think that they should apply for so many schools, or is it more like different for different people? Like, is there a strategy behind it, or like how many schools did you apply for?
So I chose to apply to 5 schools this time. So that is to answer your last question.
Okay.
And then coming to the first question, where what is the number? Is there a number at all? The straightforward answer to that is no.
Right.
Basically, you have people top schools with a GMAT of 600, 610, and so on. So, if you basically if you look at any B school, if you attend any B session or a webinar or whatever it is, what they stress, there's going to be a holistic review of your profile. So everyone knows that a GMAT of 600 is a strong score. So if you know that you're lacking in one area, you need to have something really good in some other place where you probably might have really strong extracurriculars, or you have experience working with something in the social sector, an NGO, or with a government organization where you did something really cool, worked on some really cool projects or stuff like that. So it eventually boils down to the whole profile. So you know what you already have on your profile. You already are aware subconsciously of what are your strengths and what are the areas that you need to improve. So that's basically how you balance out. So there are 3 primary categories in which B schools evaluate your profiles. One thing is the academics and test scores basically. So academics will be your undergrad and graduate if you have any scores, and the GMAT, and then the second area is your work experience and or the quality or strength of your work experience basically, and the third, who are you or what are you outside work. So what kind of a person, interest, and that kind of stuff. So you can primarily break things into categories and sort of try to evaluate yourself, and if you're weak in some area, then you have to compensate in.
Okay. So understood. So just because Dilip was at some point of time inaudible, I'll just repeat for the sake of everybody. What he meant was that it's a combination of personality, what you are at work versus what you are outside work, and then there's the overall profile, which includes your work experience, your GMAT score, your undergrad college, obviously your marks, and one of the most important point he touched upon was that even if one of this area is sort of makes you feel weak, there are other areas to catch up on. So Dilip, I think it's more like it's a very holistic way to approach admissions, right? It's not like typical Indian setup wherein you're supposed to give an exam, and if you just don't qualify, you don't qualify. And
Absolutely.
as harsh as it may sound, if the cutoff is 60, 59 and a half, and you're out. Whereas in this, from what I understood from your answer, is you still get chances. Like if you have not up to the mark in one field, maybe there are other fields you can, add extra value. Is that a fair understanding?
Yeah, I think that's something. Just to add to it, one more thing, to give you an example of setting to one part. For me, I would say the work has been strong for me, and the extracurricular, I would say, okay-ish. But on the academics part, I had a GPA. So for me, it was really important to have that to sort of compensate to that one particular weakness in my application. And that's where this sort of personalized approach was really important for me.
Understood. But looking at your GMAT marks, I don't think so. Your acads would be really bad. We'll leave that conversation on the side. But yeah, I'll talk to you one-on-one on that. So, Dilip, we spoke about a bit about GMAT, preparation of the same. How do you go about selecting colleges? Can you also sort of throw some light on, because I believe out of 5 colleges, you got 3 admits, and 2 of them were full school and one of them 50% school. That's really staggering. So I just wanted to know, is there any difference about the rounds you apply? Like, so there are obviously, I think for all of us who are on the call, there are multiple rounds in which you apply for B school. Round 1, round 2, round 3. Typically, there are 5 rounds for international applicants. They would be till round 3 because you have visa formalities. So typically, international applicants can only apply till round 3. So Dilip, if you don't mind, can you throw some light and educate us what's the difference in these rounds and how does that system work?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a important question for everyone who doesn't have access to money. So most people would want to sort of try and minimize their cost, and round 1 typically is the best time to apply, and you have to apply as early as possible to be considered for most of the scholarships. So to help you understand it better, let me put it this way. So schools have a certain amount of funding or certain amount of money available for the scholarships. So if you're a round 1 applicant, they have more flexibility on sort of trying to offer you more amount because they see your profile. If they like you, they would really want to lock you in and not want to lose you. And eventually, as time goes by, they eat into their resources, and the budget basically keeps getting consumed. So if you basically have applied in a round 3, there will be a very limited amount of funds that are available to the school.
Understood.
Even if they want to offer you more, they can't. Their hands are tied.
Okay.
So that's basically the logic behind this.
Okay. So, Dilip, there is another term which is very frequently used, which sort of confuses a lot of people. That is a rolling basis admissions, right? So, round 1, round 2, round 3, rolling basis admissions. How do these two things connect? Like,
so rolling admit is something where basically means there is no hard deadlines for rounds. So basically, a school usually has either a rolling basis or a round basis. So if there is a rolling basis, they start evaluating your application as and when you submit it. So if you submit it today, they start evaluating and working on it from whatever is the earliest possible time frame for them. But if it's a round basis, let's say there's a deadline on 30th of April, they won't start looking at any of the applications that come in until 30th of April, until the deadline basically. So they'll start working on them from the 1st of May.
Understood.
So that's basically the difference in this approach.
Understood. Understood. Dilip, just one small query. Can you and I'm not going to ask you all the colleges you applied for, but you got an admit in 3. So would you mind spelling out the same with which one of the 2 had 100% call and which one had a partial funding?
So I had full funding from Emory University at Tech. So that is basically the Goizueta Business School and Scheller School of Business.
Okay.
And I've had 50% from USC, University of Southern California, which is the Marshall Business School.
Okay. So okay. Since your voice was slightly inaudible for a point, so just for our viewers, I'll repeat. 2 of the schools where Dilip got 100% call was Emory and Georgia Tech, Scheller. Another university, if I heard it right, it was USC Marshall with 50% call. Am I right, Dilip?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Now, I guess the most important part, how did you zero in on such staggering scholarships? Typically, the conventional wisdom is that MBA students typically don't have scholarships, right? And getting an admit into 3 with 100% call, this is really staggering performance. So can you just sort of educate us, how did you zero in on scholarships? Are there anything extra you have to do? How did you manage those scholarships?
Yeah. So basically, to answer this question, I'll start with this. There are primarily 2 kinds of scholarships. One is the merit sort of based scholarship, which every applicant to the school is considered for. Apply to the school, so they evaluate you against the applicant, whether or not they want to offer you an admission, and same time consider you for a scholarship, whether or not they want to offer you how much. So it basically depends on the strength of the applicant. There's a different thing also where there's also a lot of privately funded scholarships, which are sometimes sponsored by certain companies and stuff. So these are scholarships you would have to apply separately, where you need to, in most, to write a separate essay to sort of make your point as to why you are eligible for the scholarship and why they have to give you what are your strengths, what do you contribute, and stuff like that. So for me personally, being a typical Indian engineer male, I did not really have much to sell in terms of applying for a different sort of scholarship. So for me, it was either a merit scholarship or nothing. So that's how it was for me. So that is basically the kinds of scholarships. And then in order to answer the other part where you look at basically how I got the scholarships, I believe is basically primarily because of the range of schools I chose based on, I basically took a look at the class profile of all the top 25 schools of the US, and then you get an idea of what are the holistic schools and what are the ambitious ones and what are the, I don't know, gives that you can take for granted. So a good application would be you can pick 2 or 3 ambitious, 3 realistic ones and 2 or 3 short ones. How is for you to basically get through get an admit within that particular. So that's really important. So for me this time, the primary focus was to sort of minimize cost, and I basically went with realistic schools. I increased that pool, so that probably was the reason for me to get this amount of scholarships.
Understood. And there was one thing which I wanted to ask you, and since you brought this up in your answer, I'll touch upon it. When I saw your profile, and with that kind of score and an undergrad from IT, I was tempted to ask why not Stanford and Harvard, which are, sort of something which everybody looks at, right? So while applying, what was going through your mind? Like maybe you could have chosen one of those schools to apply, because so in your answer you mentioned somewhere about a portfolio strategy, right? Wherein you choose a couple of schools wherein you are sure to apply, a couple of schools where you have some chances, and then couple of your moonshots. So in your moonshots, you didn't think about Stanford and Harvard? Because frankly speaking, 760 an IIT undergrad with a good 5 years of work ex seems like a profile to apply.
Yeah, so I mean, if I were to add one, with a similar sort of profile and who wants to or who's looking to apply next year, I would definitely strongly recommend as well. For me, there are maybe 2 or 3 reasons I could or I did not apply for such a school. One thing was primarily because for me, the past 7 or 8 months have been really hectic professionally, and there were times where I've had to, I mean, basically there were more overnighters I pulled at work within the last 6 months than in the 5 years previous before that. So that was a hindrance for me. And if you're sort of looking to apply, I would strongly recommend you sort of try to balance this particular aspect better, which I could not, but I got through due to the exceptional help I have received. And then the second aspect is for me, since I had this constraint and I absolutely wanted to get through this year, I had to basically sort of focus my efforts better with the limited sort of time I had. So the second thing was for me to minimize, basically even before the COVID situation, basically it has been almost the last recession, and the expectation around the world, it's basically soon, it should be here anytime soon. So sure. I mean, that's how the thing about the 2000s, early 2000s, and then 2008, 9. This was a fact, and for me, it was really important to minimum. These are basically the 2 most important reasons why I did not or could not pick a top school.
Sure, sounds fair. So basically, you optimize for cost this time.
Yeah,
I think it's a very balanced view because of, and I'm sure COVID-19 is still new, but I'm not sure how it's going to pan out. Like things are really fuzzy, and it's impossible right now to say, like, comment on anything. Which brings me to my next question also. How are you assessing the COVID-19 situation? What's the feedback from the universities? Do you think your classes will start on time? And I guess you'll have much more idea because you're already dealing with the universities. So what's your take on it?
So basically, it's a really unfortunate situation the world finds itself in, and I hope everyone's staying safe, taking the necessary precautions. And coming to the school part, right now there are a lot of variables, a lot of things that are uncertain, and most schools and they want to start online for a few months, maybe 2 months if needed, and then move to the in-person experience. So for me, So that's basically how where the schools stand at the moment.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, there was a slight uncertainty with when the recession would hit. So the silver lining of this whole situation is that now when the recession is going to hit. So we know we are almost on the brink of a recession, and the consensus is that basically, if there's a recession, that's the best time you need to be at a school, because by the time you graduate, the economy will be reeling back, and there's not much earning potential that you lose during your time in school when compared to normal duration. So that's my outtake. So for me, the preference, my personal preference is to start right away in this cycle where I got an admit, but then we also have to wait and watch with the factors that are in play if they allow it or not.
So that's very important point you mentioned, and one of the most important takeaways for me, wherein you said that when there is a recession, it's better to be in school. Somehow, to an extent, I've heard this statement from a lot of people, and to an extent, I agree, because job market looks shaky. There's absolute uncertainty, and there's one thing sure about education is that even like you once admitted, you are admitted, right? Nobody's going to take away your seat. It's a good time to learn a new skill, because you don't know when world comes out of recession, what are the things which are going to sell. Maybe some new skill set, and school gives you that amount of time to at least try to prepare. So that's something which is interesting. So even you are looking at your first session online, or do you still hope that you'll be in US and attending your course in person?
So for me, the preference is basically to have an in-person experience and to live the full experience of an MBA that I basically was looking at, or basically what I subscribe to.
Sure.
So that's my preference, but then we might, or I might basically eventually find myself in a position where I have to take classes online for a good part of 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, understood.
So I've already exceeded my time. I'll just put in one last question, even though I had a couple of more questions to touch upon, and then I'll take some questions from people who are attending the webinar. Dilip, one of the most important and probably one of the most vague also question which I'm going to ask you right now is, what's your advice after you have gone through this process? I know it's a process which takes a lot of time, a lot of money. So resources wise, even in terms of your mental bandwidth, your preparation, there's a lot which an aspirant goes through in this entire journey. So what would be your advice, also given the uncertain times we are living in, for folks who are aspiring for an MBA next year? So the class of 2021.
I kind of lost you there.
So
can you just repeat your last part?
So I was just asking you, like, what's your advice for people who are aspiring for MBA in 2021? Like, how do they approach this entire journey given the uncertain times and right? Like, you have gone through this journey, so the kind of resources it takes, the kind of commitment it takes from an aspirant. So what would be your advice to the aspirants for the class of fall 2021?
Okay, so basically, I would start by how you can utilize or basically make the best of the current situation you find yourself in. So right now, I'm sure most of us are constrained to your home, and you might be working for 7, 8 or 9 hours a day, but then you would definitely have the rest of the time. And there's a lot of time that's being saved at the moment on commute, a lot of other things, going out, hanging out with friends. So so basically these are the things which you are not able to do at the moment. So this basically is the time where you can utilize that amount of time to sort of go more rigorous with your preparation at the moment, or if you've already taken your test, invest more time in school research, and you can also try speaking to students or alumni, because even the school students at most schools right now are taking classes online, and even they have a lot of spare time on their hands. So basically this is a really good time if you are looking to sort of get some time with a current student and learn more about any particular school that you are interested in. So just you can just approach them on LinkedIn and schedule an appointment and get some time of them. So most people are very helpful in this particular aspect. So they just try to understand. So you just have to give them a brief on what you are and what is it that you're looking at, and yeah, they can comment on a lot of things regarding the fit of the school with you, or they can also sort of recommend other schools for you, because they are the ones who are already there and are seeing the things there. So they would have friends at other schools as well, so they are in a really good position to help you with your school research. So that is one thing basically on how you can utilize your in the current situation. And coming to the so basically the general advice wise, it's really important for you to start early on your test process, basically the essays, the introspection and everything. So this process, don't look at it just in terms of MBA application. Like I've also already stated, MBA is not an end, it's just a mean. So treat it that way. When you're working on your applications, you are supposed to introspect very heavily on the things that you've done, and what is it that you want to do. Are you headed that way, be it with respect to hard skills, or be it professionally, or be it so with something like how you see yourself as a person, how you want to be as a person, are you headed in that direction, all those things. So leave out the MBA application part, and you still and when you come out of this process, you still have a lot of things that you know that you need to work upon yourself. You know that basically you have an idea of what you are, what you've been, and where you want to go at, and what are the things that you need to change within yourself to get to who you want to be, and stuff like that. And that is basically the general thing. And coming to the application specific thing, so it's the most important thing is basically iterate with the application essays. So the more the iterations, the better gets. So it's really important to get feedback. The feedback, like I said, sometimes can be really brutal, and it's really important to have that sort of was really helpful for me from Career Kata. So that you sort of refine your content, come up with better content, and be able to put the best version of out there for the school too. So yeah, that's basically what I would suggest.
Okay, so Dilip, just to reiterate what you said, that iteration is the key, knowing yourself is the key, and starting early is the key. Am I sort of right in summarizing what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dilip. That was a very informative answer, and I'm sure you're also tired speaking. So what we'll do now is that I'll open up the forum next 10-15 minutes. If any of the people in this conference want to ask anything specifically from Dilip, you can just unmute yourself and answer the ask the question, or you also can type in your questions in the chat, and I'll make sure that I pass it on to Dilip.
Yeah. Hello.
Who's this? Please introduce yourself.
Yeah. This is Udit. So I have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, does it make a sense for a recent undergraduate or a person with a less work experience to pursue an MBA rather than like in India or outside India?
Okay. Dilip, did you hear the question?
Yes. So, hi Udit. So, to answer that question, graduate.
I'm sorry, Dilip, did you say anything?
Udit, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Udit, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah. So, when did you graduate?
Yeah, actually, I'm about to graduate, and I was preparing.
Okay, you're about to graduate.
Yeah.
Okay. So, basically, now that I have an admit from multiple schools, I also had an opportunity to interact with a lot of fellow admits from each of the schools I have admits from. So there are people who graduated in 2018, people who graduated in 2017. So if you're looking to apply to the US, most schools would want to have at least a 2-year experience.
Okay.
So that is for the schools in US, but there might also always be schools in other countries where that might or might not be a requirement. I particularly did not look into that because that wasn't for me, but you can definitely look up that option. And within India, I'm sure IIMs are always an option. Go straight away from your undergrad college. There's no requirement for. And with ISB, while there is a requirement for work experience, there are certain programs called YLP, Young Learners Program or something. It gives you an admit to start 2 years later. So you can apply with undergrad college and secure an admit to start 2 years later. So that is basically the sort of options that you have.
Okay.
So what I would personally recommend is, in order to maximize your MBA, it's better to have at least a year or two of experience. That's when you'll be able to make the most out of your MBA experience. And for you, basically, what I would suggest right now is, since you have this quarantine, most of your classes will probably be online right now. You won't have much to do. I don't know how many hours you probably have classes, 4 or 5 hours a day, not more than that. So this is probably a good time for you, since you're already in that sort of a mindset where you are still in school studying. You can probably start working on your GMAT right now, because the score is valid for 5 years. So if you want to apply to ISB to get an admission 2 years later, now is a good time to get a score. Or if you want to apply to B schools outside India, now is a good time to get your score and just have it there, so that you'll have a lot of time later to work areas of your application. Because if you already know what your score is,
Yes.
you'll to work on the other aspects of your application.
Sure.
Okay, if I may also add one point, Udit, that there are a lot of good schools who offer something known as 2+2, which is what Dilip also mentioned in terms of Young Leaders Program. It's basically designed for people who are just fresh out of college, wherein they can seek an admission, but they get to enter that class 2 years later after they've got 2 years of workings. So I know Harvard offers such program. I also know ISB has such program, and I'm sure there'll be other schools as well who will have such programs. So it might be a good chance for you to look at those programs. And I completely agree with Dilip on one point. Since you'll have a lot of time, you can probably get your GMAT on the side and then maybe apply at your own pace, which may be next year.
Sure.
Or probably a 2+2 program this year, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for at least one more question. Is there anybody who wants to go ahead? Guys?
Abhinav, so I have received a question from Nitish.
Yeah.
So he has graduated in 2012 and he has a scattered work experience in the past and presently working with a national bank.
Okay.
The total work experience is 3.5 years, and he's asking what are the chances of his admissions considering an average background profile.
Okay, so I've been bothering Dilip with very specific questions on a journey which has been sort of vague. But Dilip, do you want to take a shot at this question?
I didn't catch it. He got that person graduated in 2012.
I'll repeat it.
Half years experience.
I'll repeat it. So I think the question is Nitish. We are talking to Nitish. Nitish graduated in 2012. He is with a bank right now, and he has about 3.5 years of staggered work experience. So his question to you is that what are his chances if he sort of decides to pursue an MBA?
Okay, so hi Nitish. So to answer your question with respect to coming to the MBA applications in most schools abroad, so like Abhinav has previously said, like in India, most of the schools, it's basically a cutoff. It's usually a hard requirement. You either have this, yes, you're eligible. If you don't have this, you're not eligible. With schools outside, it's not that way. So you can just you basically put in your application, and if there are gaps in your employment or basically gaps with what you have done, so as long as you have an answer to that, basically you just need to explain why you couldn't work during that period, or why there was I don't know, in some cases it could be medical, in some cases it could be some requirements due to which some people might not have. There are also cases where people just take a year off or 2 years off, travel or just work on themselves. So this sort of thing is, while it is not very common among Indian applicants, it's among applicants from other countries. So people who take time off for say 2 years, 3 years, just travel or just sort of say I've been working on myself, so things like that. So basically, as long as you have an answer to the school on why you had those gaps, or why you had whatever the reasons are that basically for your gaps in your experience, you're good to go.
Just I'll add a few points, Dilip, and correct me if I'm somewhere wavering from your answer.
Sure.
So Nitish, most of the times applications would, as Dilip mentioned, would not be in black and white. You'll have to choose your school which suits your requirements as well as fit in your profile, right? There would be some schools which would be not so friendly to your application, if I may use that word, but then there is always a couple other schools who would be welcoming, right? So it's always about finding the right fit. There would never be a case wherein it's an absolute no. So unlike the admission criteria of Indian schools, that would never be the case. I think Dilip, that's what you meant, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Nitish, do you have any follow-up question for us, or are we good?
Hello, I'm audible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what actually I was a bit worried about with the same actually. Like after my graduation, I was like having some internship experience. I was working with a few online media companies, like which where my friends, relatives have started. Like it's like I have put up nearly 5 to 6 years of experience actually. But from past 3.5 years, it's like I was working with in State Bank actually. So before joining to State Bank of India, I was like not having a continued work experience. that's where while I was preparing for the competition, like for the GMAT, these things always keeps on hindering me in the mind and my backside. Like even to if I'm going to work very hard and secure some good GMAT score, would this take a toll on my admission? Like where ADCOMs, always when I see the reviews or something, they are looking for very high good academic background, like very like if a 2000 it's like 7 to 8 years of experience, like continuous work. That's the reason I was that always keeps hindering in my mind. That's the reason I was asking to you about the same question.
Yeah, I mean, so as I think Dilip answered, obviously it's not a very sort of a mathematical question which has an answer.
I understand.
But you'll always find that sweet spot, that right college which will fit your requirements as well as would be welcoming to you, right? In one of the answers, Dilip mentioned about the importance of research and iteration. So I think it will depend on how much do we go into the depth of finding that right mix of college for you. Do you get that answer?
Yes, I do.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
So I think we have already taken a lot of time.
Just I received some of the questions. I have summed it up, received from multiple attendees. So quickly, just can you answer what test series are recommended or any classes is required to score such a high marks as scored by Dilip in GMAT? So any recommended test series in terms of good quality or the type of questions he has faced in actual exam, and how can Career Kata maybe help in such preparations or just in boosting up the scores?
Dilip, I'll let you answer this one, and trust me, this would be the last question. I'm sure you are pressed for time. So
That's okay. So basically, for these, there's no hard answer as to this. No, basically magic bullet as to you take this test series and you get this. So basically, I have not taken any other test series, any other coaching than what Career Kata offered. And if you are basically out of mock test, so if you really adamant that you want to take something, buy some resources, I would suggest you purchase the mock test from GMAT website, which is mba.com, rather than going for other basically series. So for me, what Career Kata offered, the series, the test series, and the official mba.com was sufficient. So I think that should be enough, is what I would say.
cool. Okay. I think I'll end this conversation for now. I'll take some time to thank everybody, especially Dilip. Dilip, thanks a lot for taking some time out. By the way, sorry for the sort of loss of transmission in between. Dilip is actually in his hometown, which doesn't have like a very great internet, and that's why we were expecting some drop-offs in between. But Dilip, thanks a lot for taking this time out to talk to us. It's really helpful. And what you have achieved in your journey is really which makes at least me proud. Like it's great to know you. It's great to know your journey.
Thank you so much, and I would once again thank the people at Career Kata for experience, for being there with me during the tough time. And
yeah, but tough times have really resulted in a good time for you, right? The journey was hard, but I think the outcome was really good. So thanks a lot, Dilip, and I also like to thank a lot of people I could see. I'm not going to name each one of them, but thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everybody. This is Abhinav, and I think we'll sign out, right? Bye.
Okay, guys. Bye, guys. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye, Dilip.